A particular version of previs or rather post-vis is on-screen, on-set compositing. And earlier I mentioned that you can make a temporary insertion of, for example, a 3D animated monster in a shot. And you can actually do this during the shooting also, to in real time see a kind of sketch of how the shot will look. And it has been often used in green screen shots. When you make a green screen shot, you usually have an actor, a real actor, that you shoot against green screen. And then this green screen is taken away digitally in post-production and replaced by another environment, for example, a virtual digital environment. And that is very common in movies like Avatar and Tron Legacy and lots of other movies. It's very common to have that you shoot actors against green screen and then put them into some 3D animated environment. And of course, when you shoot the actor on set, it's very difficult to see how it will look eventually, because all you see on the set is a green screen behind the actor. But if you do an on-set compositing, you can, during the shooting, you can take away the green screen digitally and replace it with the digital background. A low resolution, low quality version of the digital background, so that you can get an impression of how the final shot will look. And that was used very, very much in Avatar, for example. You can check out some text about Avatar, how that was made. Storyboards are of course an important part of previs, and storyboards have been done for a long time, since they are very simple to use, to do. You just draw with pen and paper usually. And the storyboards, they look a little bit like a comic book, but what they are is still images of every shot in the movie. And it is also a kind of previs or a planning tool. And you don't do storyboards for all movies. Usually you do storyboards for movies that are having bigger budgets or complex scenes or so, where you have the money and the requirements to actually plan quite meticulously. You don't do a storyboard for a typical soap opera or a TV series, but for a big Hollywood movie you do usually storyboards. These storyboards, you can scan them into the computer and slice out every frame, every drawn image, and put them into an editing software and edit the storyboard. And then you can play it. And the images will be just still images, drawn still images of simple quality. But since you animate it or edit it, you can at least see the flow of the editing and the flow of the narrative. And sometimes that is called boardomatic or just animated storyboards. And that is a simple and low cost tool that is very, very simple and efficient to use. So that is especially interesting for low budget movie makers. Yeah, so this image is a typical conceptual image which shows how things should look, while this one is visually much lower quality but more focused on composition and camera position and so on. So this one is a typical previs image. usually animated, while this one is more focused on the color scale and things like that. And this one is usually not animated. Doing previs it has been much more popular in the last 10 years, and the term previs is quite new also. But the idea to make sketches of a movie is not new. As I said, storyboards have been used maybe for 100 years or so, almost as long as we have had movies. And there are some examples of movies that where they used storyboards quite much to plan the movie. Citizen Kane is one of them, the very famous movie. Charlie Chaplin is said to have used storyboards a lot. And of course, many other directors. Hitchcock was also famous to plan everything in beforehand. But at least after what I have heard, he did it very much in his hand. So I'm not really sure if he drew storyboards, but he had it in his memory at least. When George Lucas did the first Star Wars, he made a kind of very simple previs of the space battle scenes. He actually took images, shots from old war movies with dogfights between airplanes, and he used that to plan to edit together the space battle scenes before he was shooting it. Then in the 80s and 90s, previs started to be more and more popular, and it was made possible because the 3D modeling capabilities was introduced. So you could build a 3D model like this one and animate the camera through this one. So this is done in a 3D software in Maya. And of course, the visual effects movies were early adapters in using previs. But nowadays you use these kind of 3D model previs or computer graphics previs, also for movies that are not that very heavy on visual effects. Here is a couple of examples of how long time it can take to do the previs. And I include this because it's quite interesting that the differences are so great, so big. The first one is a simple previs for a TV show here in Sweden. It took about 1 week for a 3D artist. In the movie Behind the Enemy Lines, they made quite simple previs, low quality, rough previs of most of the movie. So there were 2 people working approximately 5 weeks. So there was a total of 10 man weeks that they spent on previs. And we can compare that to the Star Wars Episode 2, where there was about 2,000 visual effect shots. And that was almost every shot in the movie was a visual effect shot. So then George Lucas was very interested in using previs. So they made quite advanced, quite well-developed previs of the whole Episode 2 and I guess the Episode 3 as well. And they had 10 people working for about 80 weeks, which makes 800 working weeks, which is very different compared to the first example there. And a final note about the team that is working with previsualization. The previous artist is a kind of new person in the movie making industry, because usually it's not the director herself that are doing the previs, but you bring in a specialized artists that do the previs. And these previs artists are working very early in the process, so they have much influence on the look of the movie or the storytelling. And they also work very closely together with the director. Often they sit together with the director doing the previs. So we have a new kind of professional that have a large influence on some movies. And traditionally, in the early planning process, there have been quite few people involved in deciding the big things in a movie. Of course, the director is involved from the start, and the scriptwriter. So those are influencing the movie very much. And quite early, the cinematographer, the director of photography is involved to decide on the camera and all that kind of stuff. So he is very influential also. The production designer is brought in quite early to design the world of the movie. Casting and location scouting is also done quite early. So these people are influencing the design of the movie quite much. And now in some movies the previous artist is also involved very early and very tightly together with the director. So it's an interesting example of how the digital technology have created a new profession that is influencing the design process of at least some movies.